Previously, the warehouse rose where the shoreline once lay. Timber and orders replaced a stretch of river that had always been shared. What followed wasn't a single clash, but a quieter kind of conflict between a company's reach and a community's way of life. No shots were fired. No verdict was given, but something had shifted. And when night fell over Nuggetville, one question remained unanswered. Who now was meant to keep the peace? Welcome to the Chronicles of the Great North. Episode 5, The Measure. The night loosened its grip on Nuggetville. Work resumed. Doors opened. Voices returned. What had been left unresolved did not stay behind with the dark. It followed people into the street, into their steps, their words, their day. Commissioner Rockwell set out for work as he always did. But the questions of the night before found him before the office did. Voices rose. The distance between paper and life narrowed. And before anything could harden into something worse, someone stepped in. Not by order, but by knowing how to stop a thing from going too far. Inside the land office, questions took on a different weight. Here, ground became maps, and disputes became correspondence. Victoria had come to determine whether the warehouse could remain where it stood, despite its placement being wrong by the records. But Rockwell could not decide that alone. The matter would be written south, filed, reviewed, answered in time. Until then, nothing would move, the river would wait, and the work would continue, exactly as it was. Meanwhile, Walter was at the bank, selling gold. The buyer was Elias Old Eye Goldwright, once a traveling ore appraiser across the northern frontier. Elias had built his name on methods few could follow. As his sight weakened, his other senses sharpened. He could weigh a promise in his palm and hear uncertainty in a voice. He had seen boomtowns rise and vanish. Claims won, claims lost. Now he worked in White Loom Banking House, not as a clerk behind bars, but as the man who decided what gold was worth. In Nuggetville, if Elias named a value, it stood.
$132.
The gold had been weighed, and, for a moment, that seemed enough. Walter stepped back into the street, with the kind of quiet satisfaction a man doesn't speak aloud. Down by the harbor, the river had pulled away from its banks. Too far. The fishermen watched it, like they always did in spring, measuring it with their eyes, pretending it was nothing new. Probably a jam upstream, someone said, and that was explanation enough. Walter didn't argue with the river. He followed the narrow creek toward his claim, boots pressing into thawing ground, Peanut at his side. In Nuggetville, gold had a price. Out here, the land kept its own measure. At the Iron Mug, no one called it a meeting, but the room knew why it had gathered. The gold had been measured. The land had been measured. Now it was men who were being weighed. The quarrel at the railway warehouse had not ended. It had only moved indoors. The company had its own dock, its own guards. If order was to hold, the town would have to keep it. Names were offered. Arguments followed. Some believed law belonged to all. Others believed it belonged to someone. By the time the lamps burned low, one name lingered longer than the rest. And somewhere in the corner, a reporter from the New Fork Chronicle listened carefully. In small towns, decisions rarely stayed small. Upstairs, Victoria began turning her arrival and everything that followed into a letter for the South.
While the structure presently remains in place, its position relative to established land boundaries warrants formal review.
It was her first letter from the North, and she meant it to be measured. The report was complete, carefully arranged, properly sealed. It gathered her arrival, and everything that had followed, into one account. By morning, it would depart, with the next sailing of Borealis. Ink dries quickly in the north. Paper does not ask why. It only carries. Morning returned to Nuggetville. The lines had been drawn the previous autumn. Straight, certain, measured. But the earth had shifted. Spring softened the ground, moved the water, eased the boundary. Men believed they had fixed. Voices rose, where one claim ended, and another began. When the shovel lifted, a familiar figure stepped between them. And the question was no longer about the ground, but about authority. By whose authority? No title was spoken, yet the shovel lowered. The earth held. His name was Marshall Redwood. In Nuggetville, authority was not always written. Sometimes it was simply recognized. Elsewhere, another measure was being taken. She climbed high enough to see the town as a whole. From the ridge, Nuggetville seemed smaller, ordered, almost simple. Smoke rose in steady lines. Men moved with purpose. The river kept its course. A town does not pause while it waits to be defined. It becomes something, through habit, through need, through the quiet agreements of those who remain. She had come to measure it, its claims, its boundaries, its promise, but standing above it, she understood something else. The town was not waiting for her direction. It would go on, with or without her, and whatever direction she chose would carry weight. From a distance, Nuggetville appeared orderly. No title had been issued, no seal pressed in wax. Yet the town moved, as if something had already been decided. Men returned to their claims. Shops closed their doors. Children crossed the street without fear. Throughout the day, things had been measured. Gold by scale, river by eye, land by stakes, property by paper, trust by hands, and power, not by title, but by acceptance. Order does not always wait for a title. Sometimes it holds, because people allow it to. The measure had not been written, but it held. In the North, what holds is what counts.